Hello friends, today I am going to discuss the product which are found in my last lecture, that is photosynthesis, the main biochemical process of the earth. Just here to recapitulate my last lecture, the product of photosynthesis, that is the glucose molecules. In this session, we will find that what will the fate of glucose and how the glucose converted into ATP. The final product which is formed by photosynthesis, it is influenced by many factors, that is light mainly intensity of light. The intensity of light that influence the product of, as we have discussed in the action spectrum and absorption spectrum, when the light move from the blue light to the red light, the rate of photosynthesis becomes high. Besides this, the concentration of carbon dioxide, which also influence the product of the photosynthesis, availability of water, huge amount of water when available, the product will be also increased, and the amount of chlorophyll. When the amount of chlorophyll is much sufficient, the product will be also high. Besides this, all the factors of the photosynthesis which are present in the minimal quantity, that influence the product of the photosynthesis, that has illustrated by a law, that is called law of limiting factor, which was given by Blackmans. Now, finally, the product of photosynthesis, that is glucose. This glucose molecule, when going to be oxidized and form the various type of product, that is ATP. All living organisms required ATP or the energy for various metabolic process. These metabolic process are growth, development, movement, uptake of materials. The sum total of all these activity, that is the catabolic activity and the anabolic activity which occurs inside the cell, is called metabolism. This has been categorized into two groups: anabolic, that is the biosynthetic activity of the cell, which are endergonic. Endergonic, that means the energy dependent. There are many processes in our body or inside the cell, that is active transport, muscle contraction, cell division, growth, bioluminescence, locomotion and nerve impulse conduction, that require ATP, which comes from the oxidation of glucose, which is the product of photosynthesis. The next another process of the metabolism, that is the catabolism, breakdown of these molecules form the simple compound. It is a energy producing process, that is called exergonic process. That is main source of energy for these endergonic activities in the all living organism, including plant, that is ATP, which came from the cellular respiration. So, today my topic of discussion is respiration in plant. Myself BP Shah, PGT Bio, KB Kesampuram. So, today the main discussion about the cellular respiration. What happened in the cellular respiration? That is the breakdown of organic food material, that organic food material which are the product of photosynthesis, like carbohydrate or glucose within the cell, and release of energy is called cellular respiration. It is the slow process, enzymatic process, that gives rise carbon dioxide and water and ATP. There are the great relationship between the photosynthesis and respiration in our ecosystem. That is, in photosynthesis, the chloroplast receive sunlight and it gives carbohydrate, and this carbohydrate or the organic molecules, it is going to be break down and form carbon dioxide, water and ATP. Mainly the cellular respiration, it is a series of reaction where all the product like fat, protein and carbohydrate beside the mainly glucose are broken down to make carbon dioxide, water and energy. The main site of the cellular respiration is mitochondria. The mitochondria, these are the double membranous structure, in it is found in the all eukaryotes. The outer membrane, that is the smooth, and the inner membrane, that is the crystal-like, and the matrix are present. All the enzymes for the cellular respiration are present either in the cristae in the form of oxysomes and inside the matrix. Now, what is the objective of this chapter? First of all, how glucose is going to be break down in the first stage of the cellular respiration. Next, how ATP is made in second stage of the cellular respiration. What is the role of fermentation in the second stage of respiration, that is the anaerobic respiration. Then importance of oxygen in the aerobic respiration. Here is the mitochondrial structure. Now, all this process for the formation of energy that requires substrate. This substrate may be carbohydrate, proteins and fats, but all this substrate, there is a common pathway where all these substrate going to the further reaction, that is the Krebs cycles. This substrate undergoes respiration called respiratory substrate, means those substance which is responsible for the cellular respiration, that is called respiratory substrate. It may be carbohydrate, proteins and fats, and finally the product, that is the ATP. Here is the ATP structure is there. Here ATP, the full form is adenosine triphosphate. We have discussed here ATP, ATP. Here adenosine triphosphate. It is made by adenine plus sugar, that is adenosine, and 3 phosphate molecules are there. Phosphate is in the form of H3PO4 that form the ATP. It is the main source of energy for the metabolic process in the all living organism. When the one ATP, one phosphate is released from the ATP, then it form ADP and it release energy in the form. And when second phosphate group is break down, then it form AMP, that is adenosine monophosphate. This one is adenosine diphosphate, and it also release energy. For this energy help in the various metabolic activity. Now, how you can define? We can define the cellular respiration or respiration. It is a slow oxidation process. It is slow oxidation process, because we can compare the respiration with burning. In burning, there is also release of energy and oxidation also takes place, but here is the in cellular respiration, the oxidation becomes slow, and for this oxidation it required enzymes, but in case of burning there the no enzyme is required, only the air, that is oxygen, is required for the burning. It is completely enzymatic process leading to the production of chemical energy. So, in this way we can summarize the respiration is the slow oxidation of organic food material controlled through the enzyme leading to the production of chemical energy is called cellular respiration. We can say that it is an, as we have discussed, it is an exergonic process. Exergonic process means it release ATP, it release energy, or we can say also it is a catabolic process. Catabolic process is called, why? In this cellular respiration we will see the carbohydrate molecules which is the product of photosynthesis, as we have discussed, either in presence of oxygen or in absence of oxygen, it gives carbon dioxide, water and ATP. So, here the catabolic process breakdown of the molecules, organic molecules into the simpler form in presence of oxygen, that is called oxidation. So, this one process is called catabolic process. We can compare respiration with breathing also. In the breathing there is the exchange of gases takes place. Now, what are the phases of respiration? There are mostly 3 phases of respiration we can discuss here in this form, that is external respiration, in this process in external respiration there is the involve of exchange of gases from the outside, the oxygen from the environment taken by the tissues, and from the tissues the oxygen came from the environment, and from the tissues the carbon dioxide is released to the environment. This is called external respiration. In external respiration there is the exchange of gases oxygen and carbon dioxide from environment to the tissues and carbon dioxide from tissues to the environment. Now, the second one phase, that is internal respiration. It is also called tissue respiration. It involves the when oxygen reaches inside the cell or the tissue from the environment, it reaches to the blood, and from the blood carbon dioxide is released and goes outside. So, this type of respiration which take where there is the involvement of tissue, that is called internal respiration. The another type of respiration which is very important in this chapter, that is called cellular respiration. In this respiration the glucose molecules is break down to the carbon dioxide with the help of enzyme. So, there are the 3 phases of respiration, that is the external respiration, internal respiration as well as cellular respiration. All 3 respiration takes place in our body on the all the living organisms including plants also, but the mainly in this chapter we have discussed to the cellular respiration, how the breakdown of carbon dioxide into the carbon dioxide and the release of energy. Now, the respiratory fuel. The respiration takes place with the help of certain organic compound. These organic compound are called respiratory fuels. These respiratory fuels may be carbohydrate, may be protein, may be fat. Out of these three, the most common respiratory fuel or the respiratory substrate is carbohydrate. In carbohydrate, glucose is most efficient, that is easily break down. Glucose is used because it is easily oxidable, easily oxidized, and it is available in our body fluid. Other carbohydrate like starch in plant, because we know that starch is stored in the form of carbohydrate in plant, or in animal glycogen is stored in animal. When glucose are not available for the oxidized or the cellular respiration, this starch and the glycogen, it is break down by the biochemical process and further converted into glucose, and then cellular respiration takes place. So, main respiratory fuel, that is glucose molecule, which are used in all living organisms, that is plants and animals. Now, what are the physiological value? Physiological value of fuels like carbohydrates and protein and fat. When 1 gram glucose is going to be oxidized, it gives 4 kilocalorie energy, while 1 gram fat is going to be oxidized, it gives 9.0 kilocalories. That means, in comparison to the carbohydrate, it is 2.25 times more than glucose. But fat is not stored. In case of the camel, it is stored in hump. 1 gram protein or the amino acids, when going to be oxidized, it also gives 4.0 kilocalorie energy. Mainly the respiratory fuel is glucose, which gives 4.0 kilocalorie energy, but the most kilocalorie was given by fat. Glucose, fat and protein all involved in the cellular respiration. There is a common scheme for all three, that is called Krebs cycle, which we will discuss later on in this chapter. Now, why plants have not a special type of respiratory organ? In case of the animal, there is a special type of respiratory organs. In lower animals, there is tracheas, phlegm cells. In case of human being, the lungs, and the various type of respiratory organs are present in different type of animal for the respiration. But in plant, there is no special type of organ for the respiration, because each part of the plant can take care of its gas exchange demand. Root, stem and leaf all are responsible for that. They do not have much demand for the gas exchange. Third one point, plant produce oxygen by photosynthesis, or human being receive from the environment. Next, root, stem and leaves respire at low rate than the animals. So, plant does not require a special type of respiratory organs. Each living cells of the plants are located close to the surface of the plant. So, there is no respiratory organs is essential for the plant. Now, equation for the respiration we have already discussed. Now, the balance is C6H12O6 as we have discussed. In comparison to when combined with oxygen, it gives carbon dioxide plus O2 and ATP. When we going to be balanced 6, 6, 6 and it gives 38 ATP. Sorry, here oxygen is not water. So, when one molecule of glucose combined with 6 molecules of oxygen, it gives 6 molecule of carbon dioxide, 6 molecule of water and 38 ATP. It is also called amphibolic pathway, because in respiration both catabolic and anabolic process are there. Krebs cycle is the common metabolic pathway in the interconversion of carbohydrate, protein and fat. We have discussed in another slide. In this slide, the carbohydrate, which is the most accurate respiratory fuel for the respiration, it converted into simple sugar, that is glucose, which can be easily digestible or easily available in our body, that converted into glucose 6 phosphate, fructose 6 phosphate and finally, it undergoes into the Krebs cycle. So, when we started with the carbohydrate, it reaches to the Krebs cycle. When the substrate is fat, it converted into fatty acid and glycerol, then and it finally enters into the acyl coenzyme and Krebs cycle, which we will discuss later on. Now, when the substrate is protein, it converted into amino acid and this amino acid reaches to the and converted into the pyruvic acid, then pyruvic acid undergoes acyl coenzyme, then Krebs cycle is going on. So, all three main substrate for the respiration, finally, there is a common pathway that is called Krebs cycle. So, this slide shows the interrelationship among the metabolic pathway, showing the respiration mediated breakdown different organic molecules to carbon dioxide and water. So, Krebs cycle is the common pathway for all the substrate like carbohydrate, proteins and fat. Now, come to the main or the important topic of the respiration, that is RQ. The RQ, the name as indicate, R for respiratory, Q for quotient, respiratory quotient. It is defined as it is the ratio of volume of carbon dioxide evolved to the volume of oxygen consumed. As in our this reaction, when one molecule of glucose combined with 6 molecule of oxygen, it release 6 molecule of carbon dioxide, 6 molecule of water. So, the RQ of carbohydrate, that is the glucose, the volume of CO2 evolved divided by volume of O2 consumed. Here the volume of CO2 is 6 CO2, volume of oxygen consumed, that is the 6 O2. So, RQ is 1. So, respiratory quotient for the glucose molecules, that is RQ is 1. Besides this, there are another substrate for RQ. For example, when RQ is 1, that the substrate will carbohydrate. When RQ is less than 1, the substrate will protein or fats. The RQ may be greater than 1, may be infinite, may be 0, we will discuss here later on. Now, this is the RQ of carbohydrate. Let us take another example of organic compound reactions. C51 H98 O6. This compound is called tripalmitine. It is a type of fat. When it combined with oxygen, it gives carbon dioxide and water, no doubt. As we have discussed, any organic compound like carbohydrate, protein and fat, when combined with oxygen, it gives release carbon dioxide and water. Now, balance this reaction. When we balance this reaction, here 2C51 H98 and O6, when it combined with 155 molecules of oxygen, it gives 102 molecules of carbon dioxide and 98 molecules of water. Now, it is balanced. Now, what is RQ? Volume of CO2 evolved, that is 102 CO2 divided by volume of oxygen consumed, that is 145 O2. That means 102 by 145, it will be equal to 0.7. So, as we have discussed, when the RQ value is less than 1, that is 0.7, it may be fat or protein. So, with this reaction we can say that the tripalmitine is not carbohydrate, it will be fat or protein. Let us give another example, that is triolene. The formula is C57 H104 O6. This is called triolene. When it combined with oxygen, it also gives carbon dioxide plus water, no doubt. Now, when we balance this reaction, the oxygen will be 80, carbon dioxide 57 and water 52. Now, the RQ is 57 CO2 divided by 80 O2, that means 57 by 80, it will be 0.7, that is also may be fat or protein. For the protein, the R cube more or less equal to 0.5. So, when it is going to be more than 0.5, that will be fat. So, the triolene is also a type of fat, because here the RQ is 0.7. So, triolene in this reaction, in the both reaction, we can say that when the RQ value is less than 1, then it may be protein or the fats. Okay. Let us consider another example of another reaction like C6H12O6, when combined with oxygen, it form malic acid. Or water. In this reaction, you will find that there is no release of carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is not released. So, it takes place when we balance this reaction, 2 molecule of glucose, when combined with 3 molecule of oxygen, it gives 3 molecules of malic acid and 3 molecules of water, that is malic acid. Malic acid we have already discussed, it is the product of C4 cycle, malic acid, aspartic acid, that is the product of the C4 cycle. Now, what will be the value of RQ here? Here no carbon dioxide there. So, carbon dioxide 0 or nil, and oxygen consumed, that is 3. It means 0 divided by 3, it means 0. When the RQ value is 0, it will be the succulent plant. Example, Opuntia. We have already discussed this succulent plant in CAM pathway in photosynthesis, crassulation, acid, metabolism pathway. So, now here we will find that when RQ is 1, that the substrate will be carbohydrate. When RQ is less than 1, then the substrate will be protein or fat. RQ when exactly 0.5, that will be protein, greater than 0.5, that will be the fat. When RQ is 0, that will be succulent plant, example Opuntia or any other plant which shows the crassulation acid metabolic pathway. Now, what happened in the another reaction when we use another organic compound, like here the reaction is this one COH, that is oxalic acid. When oxalic acid is going to be oxidized, what happen? You will see here, when oxalic acid is oxidized, it also gives carbon dioxide and water. Now, balance this reaction, the 2 molecule of oxalic acid when combined with oxygen, it gives 4 molecules of carbon dioxide and 2 molecules of H2O. Now, what will be the RQ? You can easily solve this. Volume of CO2 evolved, that is 4 CO2, volume of oxygen consumed, that is 1 O2, that means 4 by 1, RQ is 4. When R here it means the RQ is greater than 1. When RQ is greater than 1, the substrate will be organic acid. Let us give another example of organic acid like C4H6O6. When it combined with, it is tartaric acid. When it combined with oxygen, what happened? It also gives carbon dioxide and water, no doubt. Now, when we balance this reaction, the 2 molecules of tartaric acid, it combined with 5 molecules of oxygen, it gives 8 molecules of carbon dioxide and 6 molecules of H2O. Now, what will be the RQ? The RQ will be 8 CO2 evolved and 5 O2 consumed, that means 8 by 5, it will be equal to 1.6. Here also RQ is greater than 1, that means when the RQ is greater than 1, that will be organic acid, the respiratory fuel will be the organic acid. Let us consider the another example of malic acid C4H6O5. This is the formula of malic acid. When combined with oxygen, it also gives carbon dioxide and water. When we balance this reaction, 3 molecules of O2, 1 molecules of malic acid combined with 3 molecules of O2, it gives 4 molecules of carbon dioxide and 3 molecules of H2O. Now, what will be the RQ? RQ will be 4 CO2 divided by 3 O2 consumed, that is 4 by 3, that means 1.3. Here also RQ is greater than 1, then the substance will be organic acid. Now, with the help of this discussion, we can finally show that the value of RQ classify the organic compound or the respiratory fuel that can be used. The RQ value of one another reaction, that is in anaerobic respiration, where there is no use of oxygen, here glucose molecule is going to be break down. It gives alcohol, that is ethyl alcohol, sorry, C2H5OH plus carbon dioxide. Here there is no use of oxygen. So, this type of reaction is called anaerobic respiration, where for the oxidation there is no need of oxygen. Now, when we balance this reaction takes place with the enzyme that is called gmase. Now, when we balance this, the 2 molecules of ethyl alcohol, it gives 2 molecules of carbon dioxide and ATP is much less, that is 2 ATP is released in case of anaerobic respiration. Now, what will be the RQ? The RQ value is 2 molecules of CO2 evolved and nil or 0 O2 consumed, that means 2 divided by 0. When anything divided by 0, that will the result will be the infinity. When RQ is infinite, then the reaction is anaerobic respiration. Now, with the help of this all these reaction, we can summarize the different type of respiratory fuel in this, that is the respiratory quotient, that is the RQ. When the glucose molecule is there, the RQ value is 1. When the fatty acid, that is the 0.7. When greater than or less than 0.7 or the 0.5, that is the protein. if any degree of anaerobic respiration occurs, RQ value signify the above value of 1 are obtained. Now, in this chart we can add this, when the RQ value is infinite, the reaction will be anaerobic respiration. Now, steps of aerobic respiration. The aerobic respiration steps are glycolysis, Krebs cycle, electron transport system and oxidative phosphorylation. Now, here we discuss firstly the different types of cellular respiration. According to the dependence of oxygen, the cellular respiration are of two types. That is aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. The aerobic respiration, it occurs in, as we have discussed, it occurs in mitochondria. And ATP is formed. So, the mitochondria is called powerhouse of the cell. Aerobic respiration, it takes place in presence of oxygen in most of the plants and animals. So, when respiration takes place, cellular respiration takes place in presence of oxygen, that type of respiration is called aerobic respiration. When there is no involvement of oxygen, that type of respiration is called anaerobic respiration. It takes place in cytoplasm. There is no involvement of molecular oxygen. But there is a common process for aerobic and anaerobic respiration which takes place in cytoplasm, that is glycolysis. Glycolysis is the first step of respiration. It takes place in cytoplasm. It is common for aerobic as well as anaerobic respiration. For glycolysis, it releases energy, that in glycolysis 2 ATP is released. So, the first of all we discuss about the aerobic respiration. In aerobic respiration, there are mainly 4 phases are there. These 4 phases are, that is, first phase is glycolysis, which takes place in cytoplasm. The second step is oxidative decarboxylation. It is also called link reaction, because this link the glycolysis with Krebs cycle. So, it is called link reactions. And the third step is called Krebs cycle, and the fourth step is electron transport chain or ETC, electron transport chain or ETC. In all four process, glycolysis takes place in cytoplasm, and the product of glycolysis we will find later on. The product of glycolysis is pyruvic acid. This pyruvic acid, it is 3 carbon compound, and it is formed inside the cytoplasm. The Krebs cycle which takes place in mitochondria so the product of pyruvic acid, and before it enter into the mitochondria, the 2 carbon compound is formed, that is called acetyl coenzyme, which is the product of link reaction. Now, this acetyl coenzyme allow from the cytoplasm to the mitochondria where Krebs cycle takes place and the ATP is released, and this electron transport chain also takes place in mitochondria in oxysome. So, these are the 4 steps which are involved in the aerobic respiration, and their sites: glycolysis in cytoplasm, where the glucose molecule converted into pyruvic acid, this pyruvic acid converted into acetyl coenzyme, it is called link reaction. Here the decarboxylation process is there. In decarboxylation, what happens? As the name indicate, there is the release of carbon dioxide, and in Krebs cycle acetyl coenzyme enters into the mitochondria and Krebs cycle occurs. Then in oxysome, the electron transport chain and the oxidative phosphorylation takes place. Now, come to the glycolysis. As we have already discussed, glycolysis is the common pathway, common steps for all the process of respiration. Means for aerobic and anaerobic process, glycolysis takes place. Here is the cell, suppose this is the cell, here is the nucleus, nucleus is bounded by nuclear membrane, and here is the mitochondria. Outer wall is smooth, and in mitochondria oxysomes are there. This one is cytoplasm. So, we can summarize this: the in cytoplasm glycolysis takes place. Here the glucose molecule is converted into pyruvic acid. One glucose molecule, it forms 2 molecules of pyruvic acid. The pyruvic acid is 3 carbon compound. Now, this pyruvic acid from the pyruvic acid, as we abbreviate it PA, it found in cytoplasm, it enters into the mitochondria for where Krebs cycle takes place. Before enters into the mitochondria, the pyruvic acid converted into acetyl coenzyme. This reaction we have already discussed, that is called link reaction. Now, glycolysis, it is also called EMP pathway. EMP pathway or the glycolysis, because details of glycolysis was given by 3 scientists, that is Imbaden, Meyerhoff and Parnas in 1930. So, the name, first name for all 3 E M P. So, E M P. All 3 scientists, Imbaden, Meyerhoff and Parnas, given the pathway of glycolysis. So, this pathway is called EMP pathway or glycolysis. Glycolysis we can define simply, it is a sequential series of reaction. Sequential series of reactions occurs in wide varieties of tissue which results the degradation of glucose molecule, that is 1 molecule of glucose into 2 molecule of pyruvic acid. So, simply we can define when the 1 molecule of glucose is break down into the 2 molecules of pyruvic acid, that gives the reaction of glycolysis. The rest biochemical process or the its molecular formula we will discuss in our next discussion. Thank you.